What is going on, guys? Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by the great John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati. We're going to break down the parallels of exactly what's going on with Trey Hendrickson and what it means for TJ Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get right into it. Hey, John, absolutely stoked to have you on today. Obviously, we have a ton of news going on in the AFC North. This offseason has been very long, but it's been very active. Two of the biggest stories, not only in the division, but throughout the NFL, are TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson. Just give us a brief run through of exactly how the Bengals and Trey have gotten to this point. Obviously, we know it's been years of him asking for trades, him wanting to be paid, the Bengals pushing back. He's technically still on the team and on the roster and has a contract. Why is he pushing so hard? What has happened to get to this point?
I think in simplest terms, he just kind of wants some respect. Like, this is a guy that he signed his first major contract in 2021 when the salary cap was at a level affected by COVID-19. He didn't get a lot of guarantees in that deal. It was really just a signing bonus. And immediately, like, he broke out that season as the first time, full-time starter with the Bengals. He made the Pro Bowl. And I think at that point, he kind of realized, man, I'm a little bit underpaid, especially compared to some of the best players at this position, and especially in terms of guarantees and security with the contract. And he's been fighting that. He's been contesting that for years, as you mentioned, and things almost went to a head in 2023 before both sides kind of settled on the 1-year deal that he's about to play right now, which was a slight pay bump and raise and everything, but it didn't add that much guaranteed money to his repertoire, to his bank account. He's 30 years old now. He's at the peak of his career. Like, he's almost won Defensive Player of the Year last year. He made it an All-Pro for the first time in his career. This is his time to really get that final bag, and not being able to hit free agency, I think, was a real killer for him, especially with how much pass rushers are getting paid nowadays, and how much TJ Watt may be getting paid here in a couple weeks as well. So I think he just wants to maximize his earnings right now. He loves being in Cincinnati. He loves raising his family here. He loves playing for the Bengals and Zach Taylor, but he doesn't want to do so if he's not compensated appropriately. And he's not going to, this is his words, he's not going to apologize for the going rates of the defensive ends in the NFL. And that's clearly a lot higher than what he's been paid and what the Bengals are currently offering. So he's dug in. He wants a market rate deal for his services, and that's probably a lot more than what the Bengals are offering right now.
That's a great point, because that was really what my next question is going to be. Is we know that Myles Garrett just got paid $40 million per year. We know that TJ Watt wants north of that. We know that Micah Parsons and Aiden Hutchinson are on TJ Watt's heels, hoping that he signs so they can jump in. Here's the thing. Trey Hendrickson, as you said, close to Defensive Player of the Year. Nobody has more sacks in the NFL in the last 2 seasons than Trey Hendrickson. So where does he slot into that? Is he want over Myles Garrett as well? Maybe a little bit less than Watt. Obviously, we know he's not really making that right now. If you had to guess, or maybe you even know, how much would you say Trey Hendrickson wants on like an APY or average per year basis right now?
I think my answer now is different than it was back in February, when I think this whole situation should have been resolved before, the likes of Max Crosby signed for $35.5 million, Danielle Hunter, $36 million for another year, Myles Garrett for $40 million. I don't think that he or the Bengals are entertaining anything close to a market resetting deal, which would be north of $40 million per year. I think the fact that he's in this point of his career, he's at the peak. There's not going to be a lot of peak years left in his time. And considering the fact that, like we just saw, like the, anonymous execs and scouts and coaches rank Trey as like the 6th best guy, because there's not a ton of traits there. And obviously youth comes into that as well, but he's not the most explosive. He's not the bendiest necessarily compared to the likes of Watt, Bosa, and Parsons and the other elites of the position. So I think his demands and what the Bengals view him as kind of reflect that a little bit. It's not about necessarily resetting the market, but it's definitely about a lot more than just the 21 million AAV that he's got right now. I think the Bengals are probably a little bit under that $30 million per year range, which is still, a considerable raise considering what he's getting paid right now. But with everyone else getting paid, well north of $30 million per year, I think that's probably what he's after. I think it's going to be similar to what Max Crosby ended up signing back in March, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Obviously, him being a little bit older than Max has some implications to it as well. But I think you're looking at that price tag in somewhere in the mid-30s, $30 million per year range. I don't think it's going to be north of 40. I think everyone recognizes that he is not Myles Garrett. I don't think he's that delusional, but obviously he's worth a lot more than anybody's getting paid now, and that's why he's dug in.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. I guess my main question would be, we've seen this Bengals franchise completely redo a lot of things, and the catalyst of that has been Joe Burrow. I mean, everybody's talking about quarterback right now. They win a game by how many points, and he's out here ripping Zach Taylor. He obviously has a lot of greatness in him. He wants the Bengals to be great. He has single-handedly changed a lot of what they've done traditionally as a franchise. I mean, who would have thought that the Bengals, of all teams, would be the team to pay two top wide receivers premier value in the market? That's exactly what they did. So while Joe might not have a direct influence, obviously, in these contract talks, do you think that in the back of the Brown family's head and everyone else that's making these decisions, they're thinking, boy, if we don't sign Trey, or if we trade Trey, or if this falls through, Joe is going to be very upset. And we have a great quarterback. We've done a lot. Is there a Joe Burrow effect, is I guess what I'm asking.
I think there is. No, I don't think there is. I know that there is. The intensity of that effect, I don't know for sure, but his word definitely carries more in that building than pretty much everyone else who doesn't have a corner office, right? They recognized how the Carson Palmer charade ended, and the fact that they never listened to Carson, and he's obviously ripped them in the 15 years since that partnership ended. They have listened to Joe, and I think that's been the biggest area of growth. They don't always do the right things. There's still a lot of things that I criticize them for in terms of their unwillingness to structure these contracts in just a grown-up way in the modern NFL. But in terms of giving their quarterback what he wants, I think they've made a lot of strides in that regard. And it's unusual for a quarterback to really pound the table and say, we have to pay this guy on the other side of the ball, right? At the end of the day, Joe Burrow and how he prepares for the season has nothing to do with the defense, right? It's not like, Trey not being there in the offseason is that big of a distraction for him, but he recognizes how valuable that Trey is to the team, and obviously being the best defensive player on their defense, right? Like that clearly means something. And I think it meant a lot to Trey that Joe pounded the table for him and said, this guy has to be included in our future plans, along with obviously Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think when he was asked about it during mandatory minicamp, how Trey wasn't there, is it a distraction? And he said, of course it's a distraction. You guys are asking me about it. Of course it's going to be a distraction, naturally.
Right.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that they started the Bengals and Trey resumed talks like right after that. I don't think it's that big of a coincidence that kind of happened. Obviously, I don't think those talks have really gone anywhere. I think they were just more or less touching base, and these things kind of end up always going to the deadline. But I think Joe is kind of exhausted as much leverage as he possibly can, because that's not a position that he necessarily wants to be. But I think he realizes that his voice carries a lot of weight there, and the Bengals realize it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, he's definitely been, like I said, just a vocal change to the Bengals as we know him. So I guess my last question would be, in your opinion, one, is Trey Hendrickson a Bengal in 2025 and beyond? And two, if that's the case, when does it happen? When do we see this resolution come to terms?
So I do think that they will get something done. I think the deadline to trade him was expired in the spring. I think past the NFL draft, there was just no sense in trading him, because you weren't going to get any asset that would make you just as good, if not better, this year. Like that bridge is basically burned at this point. So he's going to be in Cincinnati for better or worse in 2025, whether or not he signs a deal. I do think that he will eventually play, but that's obviously a whole nother topic. I think this gets done sometime before like the end of the preseason. I think that Trey really misses being with the team. He realizes that he has to do this in terms of just exercising any leverage that he has. But this guy is a workaholic, right? He loves practicing. He loves being with the team. He loves being with the guys. And I don't think he's going to sit out the entirety of training camp in the preseason. But I also think that the Bengals recognize that they would love to have this done prior to training camp. But unfortunately, like, they're just really slow and dragging their heels with a lot of these things. So I foresee this kind of ending sometime in August. I don't really foresee it ending right before the regular season, which is when a lot of these things end up happening. I think they recognize the importance of this. And because they've obviously started these talks all the way back in February and January, I think it's going to get to that point where both sides are going to realize that it's just best to get this done. I think Trey will recognize that whatever the best offer for the Bengals is the best that he can hope for, and he can't risk, going out there this year and potentially, ruining any free agency chances that he has next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John. Obviously, this was a great discussion. As we know, the AFC North is going to be an absolute firework again this season. We look forward to it. You have a great day, and look to have you back on the channel sometime soon.
Appreciate it, Rob.